Good morning. So, what a topic. What a topic. I feel like, again, there she is, being the Debbie Downer, and I'd be talking about some heavy stuff. But, you know, as I have been knowing that this talk was approaching my own personal calendar, I've been doing the work, and it isn't easy. It stirs up in me the moments where I have thought that just by saying the words and thinking that I'm doing the practice but not letting it penetrate the barrier that I had in my heart, I realized in great depth I kept returning to the time of Jesus on the cross. His feeling forsaken in that moment where he was giving up his life, and he had with his breath the power to say, "Forgive them. They know not what they do." I've been repeating that over and over, and it penetrated my heart so much that even as I say it now, it makes me want to weep. At the times where I have held a hardened heart because I refuse to forgive that deeply, and yet those powerful words, "Forgive them. They know not what they do." Those words, that's powerful scripture for you just to take into your heart and sit with it, even for your own self, for that part of you that has been unwilling to budge in your self-blame or your self-criticism for acts that you've done that weren't very skillful. I watch my cats that they have two black cats that I don't know where they came from, but they think that they're supposed to live at our house for the last 10 years. And I don't know why. I feed them, I pet them, but I don't know why they want to stay. I didn't go get them myself. But sometimes those two black cats, one doesn't have a tail and the other has a long, beautiful tail. I don't know if that's their issue, but they fight, and I can hear them at night, and they just do this haunting sound of really being angry and annoyed that who was there first. And they go through this little dance, and yet in the morning I go out and there's two little bulls, and they both try to eat out of the same one at the same time. It's like, okay, they're in forgiveness again. They've got it together. And then there'll be a little bit of a hiss and a little bit of a bully fight throughout the day, but in the evening, let us share a meal together. I have forgiven you once again, and the bowl of food is partaken with the group of cats. So I'm looking at that. There is this human nature in us. So I take that into who we are. Yeah, we're all one. We're one with the animal world too. There's much to see there. Their unconditional love, their willingness to forgive and to start a new day fresh. And so I'm going to share at the 9 o'clock service about the Ho'oponopono. It's been spoken to before. It's the Hawaiian practice of deep forgiveness. And it's the words where you chant the phrases over and over and over until you are polishing your own heart. And I have heard that practice from Joe Vitale. He wrote a book about it, and he brought this practice into the awareness of so many people by studying it from this great tradition in Hawaii. And so many years I've heard it, and sometimes I forget, what are those 4 phrases? So I was really looking it up and studying it throughout the week. And what I found so phenomenal about it is that I had held it in the years past just at a certain understanding, as if I was bestowing something upon someone else by my practice. And what I realized, and especially because I'm sharing this wonderful class on Tuesday nights from Ernest Holmes' work, This Thing Called You, and one particular passage struck me so powerfully because we're talking, this spiritual journey is finding that companionship with the one, right? We speak of the one God, Mary's treatment, so beautiful, this one God, this one Spirit, this one truth, this one love, and we're calling that in, we're pulling that in, that understanding, and we claim that. Now, these aren't words that are just supposed to go past your mind screen. Reverent, deep listening to that idea of this oneness. And then we recognize that we carry this truth in our heart. This is what the spiritual longing is to find and discover and viscerally feel that union, that mystical union with that one from within. And this beautiful passage, Ernest Holmes says this, talking about this journey that we're on, this course that we're on. Someday you will follow this path because I have placed a spirit within you which is ever seeking to guide, ever standing aside, permitting you partially to obliterate that spark which is part of myself. Through all the rounds of experiences, I am there. I am there. And I think about all the times where we have this light, this divine truth, this divine friendship, this connection. It is a real, mystical, true connection. We are partnered with that. This Spirit dwells within you, this spark of the divine. Is that comforting to you to know that? To feel that? To breathe that, to relax, to soften the hardened heart for the moments that we've been critical about our friends, our family, our own self. That time where we have obliterated that spark still dwells within you as you. Someday when you sit down by the roadside, weary with struggle, you will listen deeply and you will hear a voice saying, "This is the path, follow it." Even then I shall wait, for you are you, and you cannot return to your Father's house other than as a complete and perfect individualization of myself, of all that is. Always I shall be waiting. And I was so moved by that the class, we ended up going out and doing a walk on the labyrinth to feel the moments where we were engaged and full of that spirit and that knowing. And then we would pause in our walk and hesitate in those knowing of those moments where we have felt distant, where we have felt our human ego, our humanness, our pain or our suffering, and that contraction of the heart in that space. So what is this practice of Ho'oponopono that I speak to in relation to that? It is the idea, this effect. The story started from the doctor that entered into the Hawaii State Hospital that had a lot of the highest criminals in the hospital, the ones that did the violent crimes, the ones that you just want to turn your head from and be grateful that they're locked up somewhere out of your space. But these were the individuals that were just hardcore. And it was a psychiatric and psychological hospital that held these criminals. The mental ward, as you can imagine, was complete chaos. There was a nurse that reported that no day would end without a brawl among either the patients or the nurses or the staff. The energy there was so destructive, so depressive, that the staff would go on sick leave all the time. But all that changed when this particular Dr. Hugh Lin came to work on the ward. Now, his background in this practice that he brought, he learned, he was a well-scholared physician, and he had a daughter that was suffering, so he had gone to the person that was bringing this. There's another lady that was teaching this particular technique, and her name was Morna Simonia. And he went and studied with her for several years, trying to understand this practice, because she was able to heal his daughter of an ailment that was being so persistent, and only she was able to reach in through the consciousness of the mind and do this absolute healing. So he was struck by her power and this wisdom, this ancient Hawaiian wisdom. But he also thought she was a kook. But he stayed with it. And then I even went to the extent of looking him up and watching this particular Dr. Lin speak about this. And he was just such a humble, quiet man that was just so matter of fact. Oh, this is what you do. You know, this is the forgiveness work. And so even when he went into this hospital, this violent situation, this energy, he didn't do anything special. He didn't have big workshops where everybody got together and hashed out their stories. He sat in his office and he would finger through the files. And occasionally he would read about the violent acts of the different people. So he knew the climate with which he was working in. But he would arrive every morning. It was reported he was always very centered, very cheerful, very tranquil. And you can see that tranquility, that presence that shines through him when you see him on a YouTube video. But he never made one personal visit to any of these inmates. But things started to change. When he entered that facility and started doing this work very quietly, things started to change. It is reported that the prisoners and the staff gradually got along with each other. How's that? The inmates were less destructive, and the mental ward employees made more initiative to make the ward a better place to be in. They started to maintain the facility. They started to paint the walls and build a tennis court. And pretty soon the inmates were taking less medication. So he worked in this mental ward for 4 years, and during that period, the prisoners were released. The staff performed their responsibilities very dutifully. Only a few inmates were left, and eventually they had to be transferred to other wards, and the clinic was closed down because it wasn't needed anymore. Amazing. By a man that's just fingering through some files. So he didn't do anything except go through those files and do this practice. And his words of wisdom for this is, it isn't saying that you should blame yourself. Now hear this, you do not blame yourself for whatever is happening to you or around you. He is encouraging people to actively participate in healing themselves whenever a problem inflicts them. Ho'opono is all about being flexible and living your life. It is 100% your responsibility. The key is to know thyself. To know thyself. Back to that reading of Ernest Holmes, that partnership with the Spirit, to know that indwelling self within you as you know that. Be at peace with that self. And two of the phrases that are so vitally important in this work is, I am sorry and I love you. It's being at peace with the divine. You see, I thought when I first read this, I'm sorry, that I would be talking to the person out there. One that I've held in my heart for a lifetime, and my father's already passed away, but I still hold this with him. And when I say I'm sorry to him, I think I'm saying it out to him, but it's to the self in me. That I am sorry, the process, this is my divine in me. I have to let go of that past anger, any of my hurt feelings, any of my regrets. And then I can say thank you to that knowing, to that divine within me. You feel that when you say I'm sorry to the divine within you. I'm sorry for being unskillful. I am sorry for obliterating that divine wisdom, that guidance that you've been directing me into a greater knowing, into a greater seeing. I'm sorry that I have separated myself from understanding this union with the One. And that attitude of gratitude, of thanking that One for opening the heart space. So powerful, powerful practice of creating miracles of healing. And so the words that you will want to hear yourself saying when you're reflecting, so you sit with the story. And please know that forgiveness comes because you must go through the grief. If you were hurt, if you were harmed in any way, if you've hurt yourself in any way, feel the grief. Don't deny that that grief is there. If you've had betrayal, you want to feel that. You want to know that. But then you sit with the simple phrases, and it's called a cleansing process, because you're then trying to cleanse that knowing of your humanity, of the tenderness of your heart, and it's taking you deep into that place where, I must get into that place of deep humility. Deep humility. Such a practice of being in this world, where being humble and being in that space of humility does not mean that people can still walk all over you and harm you and hurt you, but that you are willing to surrender this. Forgive them. They know not what they do. So the phrases are, I love you. And you can feel, especially if you have been severely harmed, you can feel yourself just go, The heart just kind of clamps back down on those words. But you take a breath and you keep working the words. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. Over and over, you chant the phrases. The world changes around you. A key point in this is what Charlie did in this reading. It is done unto you as you believe. So, in this belief that you are now creating anew inside of you, as you are polishing into the deepest core of yourself, into that partnership with the mystical, into that knowing that divine is with you, you're polishing that. Do you feel the opportunity of that, the power of that, and this idea that and it is the law that man who sees what he wants to see. So you recognize that in your practice of I love you, please forgive me, I am sorry, thank you. You are seeing what you want to see regardless of what appears. Dr. Lin did not go out there and just keep studying all those criminals and reinforcing how bad they were. He started practicing to see what part of them dwelled within him. What part of that out there in our world definitely is a part of ourselves. If it's not a part of ourselves, we won't see it because we won't believe it and we won't see it. But when we start to recognize our beliefs in such a way that the outpicturing in the world, sometimes very much more dramatic than are the pieces inside of us, but they're still there, those are the pieces that we are working deeply to polish and to shift. So, a man who sees what he wants to see, regardless of what appears, will someday experience in the outer what he has so faithfully seen in the within. What he has so faithfully seen in the within. So we pray for this divine peace, this divine order out in our world. We don't ever balk from that truth. We are so steadfast in knowing, I love you, please forgive me, I'm sorry, thank you. You know, it is just that peace where Dr. Lin just kept knowing that as he would look at these people, he says this, I didn't heal them. I didn't heal them. I healed part of myself that helped create them. Can you own any of that? When you look at the situations in your life, any of it at all, just feel the fragments of this knowing, because it's a lot to take in. To me, it was the most fundamental revelation to date, the most important presumption of Ho'oponopono, that you are 100% responsible for everything, and everywhere. And it means not only your personal screw-ups, but also your personal successes. It means if someone somewhere did something and you became aware of that, you're 100% responsible for healing, for working on that. And it's not the same as feeling guilty for these miseries. It's a reminder of your creative power, of that gentle welcome to return back to that inner nature of absolute truth, to turn back to that one guidance, to that one truth. Eckhart Tolle called it the unmanifested. In Joe Fatale's work, he called it, going back to that 0 point. It's that cleansing process. We are cleansing the debris of our subconscious mind that has allowed these things to continue and to perpetuate. So I can see how Dr. Lin's work unfolded. Why the mental institution closed down? Because he kept polishing, and these pieces, these fragments that were in these other beings, because we're all one, began to dissolve and disappear as people began to feel more empowered in themselves. So there's this idea, this concept that the forgiveness is 100% of a cleansing process. We are looking deep into the subconscious mind. That's what every class is designed to help you discover. What am I holding? What in my human experience have I collected along the way? And as I partner with the divine, am I allowing myself to start with who I am? Can I really sit with that question, who am I? And can I love the depth of that self? You want to love your enemies, and you want to start to fall in love with that sense of birthing that greater idea out into our world, especially when there seems to be so much chaos and confusion out in the world right now. So there's an idea of just this. Ho'oponopono says it is good if it's in balance, if it is right, if it helps, if it's righteous, if it corrects, if it's responsible, if it's caring, if it's humble, if it's peaceful, if it honors. It's Pono. It's Pono. And the Ho'oponopono part of that is just allowing ourselves to recognize and to bring that forward, to see where our work is. So this idea that comes to us from Hawaii into our culture, into our understanding, is an invitation for all of us. There was a powerful passage that I read in Autobiography of a Yogi when he was talking about Mahatma Gandhi. And you know that Mahatma Gandhi worked in some of the most humble of positions in his, I'm trying to find that exactly. I copied too much stuff. I was so excited. I have like a term paper here for you. Here it is, because it's too powerful for me to not stay it exactly. Because you know in the Bible when it says, how much should I forgive? And then Jesus says 70 times 7. And you can all say, why so much? I did it once today. So this is something that Gandhi speaks, and this is what Paramahansa Yogananda was sharing, that the divine spoke to Paramahansa Yogananda when he was trying to understand that 70 times 7. Why so much? And when Yogananda went deep into meditation, deeply, that divine intuitive voice spoke to him. How many times a day do you think I forgive you? How many times a day, in our unskillful, clumsy ways, have we betrayed our own self, and yet we're forever forgiven? So it's our divine privilege, our divine duty, to be the spiritual warriors on this journey that we're on together, and to really go into that practice of deep humility, of deep service to the One, and to say that we are sorry, and to say thank you for the stories that are showing up in my consciousness, that are leading me to a greater world. As we heal what is in our world right now, we are healing what is in the past, and we are healing for the future. It is our work to do, and we have that divine companionship to guide us along the way. So join with me in a prayer that allows us to breathe an open heart. There is one love, one truth, one divine partner. And we recognize today that we are directly connected to the divine, to God, to love, ever flowing through. And we recognize truly what it feels like to open a heart and to explore and to allow the heart to soften, to let down the walls where we have allowed a suffering to even hold any shelter at all. We shed the divine light, recognizing that light is more powerful, more loving than the act itself. So we simply allow that to dissolve in the power of that light, in the power of that love. We open our heart and we forgive and we give thanks for this opportunity to truly practice with humility. And as we do so, we are filled with grace. Filled with grace. Walk from here today knowing the journey and the partnership of the divine within you as you. Blessing this moment, blessing the path, blessing the way. We simply lay it down, knowing it is so, and so it is. Thank you.
To introduce Reverend Sue, he's talking about the law of forgiveness.
Oh, good morning. Very good. Very good. I wonder if the drum could come up here for a moment. What was your name? I'm sorry. Carrie. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Can you do a drum roll for me? Yeah. Let's see if we can create this. Ladies and gentlemen. I want to introduce to you a newlywed couple. Don and Philip, will you please stand? Thank you. I had the delight of celebrating their ceremony together. I wanted to give you that spotlight one more time. So if you see them in the social hall, wish them all the love in your heart for their journey in life together. So, what fabulous movie we're in. You know, the song Pray Me is really what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is allowing God's Spirit to pray through us, to connect with that sense of the divine in such a way that we are empowered in that knowing. And I share with you a story of my own that perhaps I've shared this with you before because I've been speaking to you for a while, but then in the Bible it says forgive 70 times 7, so I can tell my story 70 times 7 if I want to. But years ago, when I first came to the center and I was invited to do a retreat, Andrea invited me to do some yoga at a retreat, and I didn't know what the retreats were really all about. And the theme for that particular retreat was forgiveness. I don't know if some people were at that retreat, but one of the theme songs that we kept singing over and over again was, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive and I just let you live. I let you be who you are, and that is a shining star in God's heaven. Anybody remember that song? Do you remember that? So I don't sing well, but I did that anyway because I don't care what you think. Not in the choir. No. But the song, we would sing it over and over again. And that is what forgiveness is about, doing it over and over and over again. It's a daily practice as you wake up in your world every day, because sometimes as our humanness takes over and our ego life is being lived, we are unskillful. And so there's this opportunity to continue to polish the self, to polish that idea of who we are and what we invite into our experience. It's a polishing of that divine light within that dwells within us. The invitation that Dr. James had invited us as each participant was to come forward in front of the group of about 35 people and speak to what you wanted to forgive. And people were walking up and just telling the most horrendous stories, and everybody was just in tears. And I thought, my first time there, I thought, well, why are they picking such hard stuff, you know? And so I had a plan, and I was going to just pick something really, really easy that I could just go up there and tell my story, and people would think, oh, she's got it together. And then I'd sit back down because I was the yoga teacher, and I wanted to look cool. And so James calls me up, and so I tried to bring up this doctor at work that, you know, had an attitude, and I had an attitude with him, but that didn't come up. My dad came up, and I couldn't even say it. I just sat there and froze, and every time I tried to talk about my father, I would sob uncontrollably. And then James said, why don't you sit back down? And I thought, oh, what a kind man. And I sat back down, and I thought, because I'm the yoga teacher, I don't have to expose myself this way in front of these other people. So we went through the rest of the processes of that particular session, and then he goes, okay, Sue, let's try that again. You kidding? So then I tried to pull up the doctor again, said, just going to go for the doctor thing. I can do that one. My dad, I forgive you for being an alcoholic. I forgive you for not seeing me. I'm only seen by you through my mother's words, because my mom would always do that codependent thing. Oh, your father really appreciates you. Oh, your father really does he? I've never heard that from him. Invisible to my father. And so the whole weekend was deep processing of that. I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. I just let you live. I let you be who you are. You see, I needed to let my dad be who he was. I needed to deeply forgive myself for harboring resentment about who my father was. And it was a wonderful, wonderful weekend of deep healing. And I remember releasing a balloon into the air of the forgiveness. And my balloon got hung up in the trees. And I thought, okay, so this isn't quite leaving my life yet. I've got some other work to do. But how it came about, I had taped that song a few months later after that retreat. My sisters wanted to do a family intervention on my father, and I lived up here, and he lived in Southern California. So my aunt wrote a letter, and all my other sisters, and they gathered, and my dad thought he was going to a breakfast. So I was really tender. I was really sorry for my dad not knowing that he was going into like a wolf's den because I wasn't there. I didn't know what it was like. I know there was a counselor, an intervention person, but I sent the tape, and I sent the tape of this song, and I sent the tape of my heart, and I put on that audio tape, I just spilled it out, how his drinking when we'd show up camping, and he would have his little box of things to drink, and he would just get schnockered right off and be gone the whole weekend, and how distant all that felt. And at the end, my dad, he was one of those that would just jiggle his keys with nervousness, and I could picture him. My sister was saying he was walking back and forth as everybody was sharing the story, and then he said, I'm an alcoholic. I will go into the program. And I remember getting that message while I was working on my unit at work, and I remember everybody around me, and I just put the phone down and sobbed at his courage, sobbed at what he was about to go through because he was a hard alcoholic, and I knew what his DTs were going to be. Let him be a shining star in God's heaven. My heart opened to him, and I was so proud. And he was sober for about 10 years, and he had his collection of coins, and he celebrated that fellowship. And then he started to drink again, and he was hiding it. And I remember every time I found his hidden lockers, my heart would tighten up again, tighter and tighter. And the only time it would really soften is when he was really, really old. And I would watch him lay on his side and take his nap, and he'd put a big red blanket around himself, and he'd fall asleep, and I'd stand at the door and look at his innocence, look at his truth, and polish that place of forgiveness, work on it, work on it, work on it daily, work on it all the time. And he passed away, and of all the things that were given away, I kept the red blanket. It starts in your own heart. Whatever your story is, my dad wasn't a bad man, just the alcohol got me. But you see, alcohol is in all of our lives. It's not just in one or two family members. It's in our society. It's in our world. And so we work on this forgiveness to forgive all of the debris in our own consciousness, all of our own stuff. And this law of forgiveness starts in your own heart. In Luke, in the Bible, it says, forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. My dad needed to forgive me for having such a snotty attitude, for holding him outside my heart, for never crossing that line and even asking how I could serve him to help him. I just distanced myself. And I was sharing this at the earlier service, that powerful moment in Jesus' life when he was doing the human suffering and wishing that maybe this could turn out another way, but no, he was already on the cross. Things were moving in that direction. He had the spiritual connection with the one Father, the one truth, that one knowing. Forgive them, they know not what they do. If we could allow simply that phrase to continue to permeate our life every day, forgive them, they know not what they do. Forgive this world for the indecision and the clumsiness and the fighting. Forgive them, they know not what they do. And as we stay as strong spiritual warriors at the gateway of our own consciousness to polish that, to allow our world to become what we want to see, and we keep allowing ourselves to forgive, to love, to be sorry for the world as it is, and to do our own personal work, to continue daily, dancing with the divine, to make that mystical union the utmost importance when we wake up in the morning. Make that connection to the divine. God is, I am. God is, and I am. And we realize that the reflection of their own soul becomes very, very humble. And in that humility, we then move out into our world and we see where else can I touch in this world where I see forgiveness needs to be. Ernest Holmes says, a man who is great enough to forgive is always greater than the one forgiven. He is superior, he is greater than his adversary. And interesting enough, as I looked back into some esoteric teachings, it was stated as this: it is the willingness to surrender of oneself and of one's own convictions for the sake of others, and is therefore closely associated with both sacrifice or concession on behalf of the lesser, in order that the lesser may be enabled to continue towards its objective. If we held everybody in that closed space of our heart, how can they move forward? And how can we move forward? You see, it's a journey hand in hand, soul to soul. It's the soul force, is what Gandhi described it as. It's greater for the concession to the lesser. Forgiveness is a divine attribute and keeps pace with man's development on the path of life. The highly evolved will therefore reveal this characteristic to greater extent than the uninvolved. It symbolizes a forgetting of the bad and the unpleasant of the past and passing forward a better future. This is written down ages upon ages of time. So this passage, I say unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. There is no limit or restriction on the grace bestowing power of forgiveness. So Jesus was the master of healing, inviting us to forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespassed against us. That key ingredient to cleanse the consciousness that holds these errors of our thinking. Because remember, if we have an error in our thinking and we have just blocked that around, it is done unto us as we believe, and it keeps repeating itself over and over in society and in our own personal world. Interesting enough, when you try to recall those moments where you felt betrayed, where you felt deeply hurt, wounded by a friend, by a lover, by the world, by your child, whatever that might have been, you can feel the visceral feeling of that, and how what happens in your body is that all the acids in your body just kind of go turned up. And what do we do with that if we don't purify that? That acid just kind of stays and becomes a tumor. That's how this all starts to make sense. How can the mind heal the body? How can the mind? It began in the mind. The mind produced that action in the body of a toxin poison when we were hurt and we were suffering and our heart was broken and we needed to do the work. You need to do the work. This isn't one of those shoulds, but the work is necessary to feel, to grieve, to cry, to mourn, to be angry at an injustice. But then what do you do with it? Do you leave it there to just churn and to have something to talk about at the table, about bickering or whining about whatever's going on? When you realize that the real call is to turn to that law of forgiveness, because we no longer want to generate this poison to any generation in the future, and we want to help cleanse and heal the future of the past. Go away and sin no more. This is Jesus' words when he would actually lay on his hands to do a healing. What is sin? Just misdirected thought. He's asking the people, and when they really get that at a deep level, think these thoughts no more, they walk away healed and lighter in their steps. They were, the roots of their sorrow were plucked deep from the depth of their soul. And the mind is then free to focus on these healing thoughts for our world. Paul Ferrini is a wonderful author, and he works a lot with Course in Miracles. And he said, don't hold the thoughts of wrongdoings in your mind, or you'll never be free. You see, you're your own torturer. You're holding them there. And so this idea to set them free, forgiveness starts in our own hearts only when we have forgiven ourselves. That's probably the hardest place. That's where it really stops. Because we were clumsy. I had done the work with my father. I forgive you, Father, for the drinking. I really had. But I didn't forgive myself for how stubborn and angry I was, for how unloving as a daughter I was, for how I rebelled in every way I could. He was a Republican, I became a Democrat just to get back at him. And he loved to make beef stew, I became a vegetarian. You see, that's not. And these little ways where I could get back at him. But I forgive you. But watch what I can do to torment your life. Forgiveness starts in my own heart when we have forgiven ourselves. Can we give it or receive it directly from others? Number 2, forgiveness is not conditional. It's not conditional. You give freely, just letting yourself go. I know you can feel that. I know you can feel the knots in your belly just soften when you even take a moment to be prayed through in such a way that the tightness around the gut just softens. Forgiveness is an ongoing process in response to every judgment, every day. We're filled with judgments. We turn on the TV. I think I'll judge what they're saying. I'll judge your hair. I'll judge your outfit. I'll judge. And then we judge ourselves as we move around in our world. We must forgive that, and we must begin to praise our world around us and to dissect through all of the debris of information that is coming our way, and just remember that there is a divine seed of truth, a divine light established in every single soul. Every gesture of forgiveness is sufficient practice. Forgiveness, move it with forgiveness. Each time you find yourself at all cornered in your own heart, see through that heart with deep compassion, with deep willingness and humility, and see what is perceived out of your ego, and remember that ego was structured to give you a full life, a joyful life, and you can take all of these tools and work with your spiritual life and move forward. It gives you your power back. You are going to own your power, and you're going to own your destiny, and you're going to create the destiny for the world. When we say, what's my purpose? What is my purpose? It's to pray daily, it's to pray unceasingly for the forgiveness of the self and for the injustices in the world. And when we allow this, we start to have a hope for a better future.
The Bhagavad Gita says, if you want to see the heroic, look at those who can love in return for hatred. If you want to see the brave, look for those who can forgive. And Gandhi brings this time and again through his work. A man of great power, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say? It didn't. He was a humble man, but a very powerful man. And he was willing to take that soul force of nonviolence and prove this truth time and again. Coming to forgiveness can be a long process of grief and outrage, as I spoke to, the sense of sadness, of loss. But we don't want to suppress any of it. We want it to have expression. And I was humbled by this as I was exploring this, because sometimes I've judged other people. Why aren't they over that yet? You know, look at them. They're hanging on. How unspiritual. They're still not forgiving that. And I thought, you know, this is true. It's not a hurried process. I can't judge anybody on that. It comes at that divine spark, at that divine touch of awakening. You suddenly are set free, and you will know it. You will know it because for suddenly you feel the belly expand and breathe. And the mind is clear and the heart is open. And we pour out our heart, and we're honoring any of the grief and everything, all in God's time. All in God's time, this freedom to forgive. So the other idea is, when we wake up to true forgiveness, we see wisely. It's not going to happen again to us when we see wisely, because we're not going to attract it. We have polished our soul. We're not putting anyone out of our heart. We're inviting this idea of mercy. I love these words. I think they're so juicy. I love the word humility. I love the word mercy and compassion. These are the words that just stir up our soul and shake up all of the stories of our heart and shed the light on them. There's this beautiful story when I was sharing with the 9 o'clock service about Ho'opono, that practice of chanting those words, those phrases of forgiveness over and over again. But there's a particular story in the a parable from the Pali tradition, and it's called the Bowl of Light. And every child was born at birth a bowl of perfect light. If he tends his light during his life, it will grow in strength, and he can do many things. He can swim with the shark, fly with the hawk, and know and understand all things. If, however, he becomes resentful or envious, or he will drop a stone into his bowl of light. Since light and stone cannot hold the same space, a little of the light goes out. If he continues to put stones in his bowl of light, the light will eventually go out, and he too will become a stone. A stone does not grow, and a stone does not move. But if at any time he tires of being a stone, all he needs to do is turn the bowl upside down. The stones will fall away, and the light will come back. His light will shine once more upon the world around him, and he will begin to grow once more. He will grow once more. He will grow once more. And I think of that invitation of the stones that we've been carrying, because unforgiveness is heavy and the burden of the heart. So we do this cleansing practice, this practice of starting with who are you, and how much deeper can you love, and can you love that personal self, that companion of your heart. I want to repeat part of Charlie's reading of Ernest Holmes. The man who sees what he wants to see. Okay, what do I want to see? I really do want to release this burden in my heart. So regardless of what appears, I'm not going to do my forgiveness and then watch what Brad's going to do next. I'm not going to watch to see if they're going to do it again. Is he? No. I'm just going to recognize that he will appear to me as I love him, as I have polished that reflection. And so I have trust. The experience in my outer world, you see, I've done my work, I've done my prayer, I've been prayed, and I will begin to faithfully see from within my outer world transform. This is exciting at this time in our world together, each and every one of you, ambassadors of peace, ambassadors of the prayer of the heart, truth seekers. Not just hearing scripture and saying, oh yeah, there's that, who died for my sins. No, this is your work. This is your personal journey and your personal work to empty those stones out of your belly and allow that belly to be soft enough that this light just infuses the world with your self-esteem, with your power, with your truth, with your radiance of God. There is books over there that I was going to read you something from. Because we've been working with this book, Working with the Law. And he closes this chapter. This whole chapter was on the law of forgiveness. So every one of you must sometime walk the path of forgiveness. We must learn to live this law. It must be important, for the Master taught that there was no hope of forgiveness for the unforgiving. Only as we forgive are we forgiven. We first must put forth our effort. Our willingness must open the way for forgiveness. We dare not ask more of the law than we are able to extend of ourselves to our brothers. Unless we prove this law by living it, we cannot hope to gain the bigness of character that life requires. Think about your own personal journey. And in the words of Gandhi, time and again, in his work, one should forgive under any injury. It has been said that the continuation of the species is due to man's being forgiving. Forgiveness is holiness. By forgiveness, the universe is held together. Forgiveness is the might of the mighty. Forgiveness is sacrifice. Forgiveness is the quiet of mind. Forgiveness and gentleness are the qualities of the self-possessed. They represent eternal virtue. How long do you do it? 70 times 7? 7 times 70? Every day, every breath. Join with me in the knowing. That our work is pure joy. As we celebrate and recognize the one love of God, the one truth that is forever casting its pure light deep into the very container, the soul of our being. This one truth, this companion, this master teacher, is that still small voice that walks with us every day. That intuitively we pause in our practice and we deeply and reverently listen. With a humble heart, we take in the power and the truth and the practice of forgiveness, beginning with ourselves for the unskilled ways, for the ways that we have acted in our world. And we recognize that as we polish those ways right here and now, they are forever released. And they no longer are outpictured in our experience in our world. And the more we do the work, we offer this prayer of heart, knowing that our world is transforming. So with such gratitude of heart for the wisdom of the sages, for the wisdom of Jesus at that moment of his greatest suffering, to remind us to forgive, for we know not what we do. So our practice at that last breath, at that last moment, is to forgive and to follow that with the power of love. I release this just knowing that today, by the grace of God, we walk from this place transformed and willing to do the work. Thank you, God, for the inspiration of truth, for the reverent ears that listen, and for the hearts that hold it. Thank you, God, and so it is.